Welcome to Industry Ignited, where we spotlight bold leaders and breakthrough innovations shaping the future of industry and healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. Leeanne Aguilar, and today I'm joined by Jordan Pollack, CEO and co-founder of SubQ Bionics. Jordan is a biomedical engineer, medical device entrepreneur, and femtech innovator developing bionic solutions to treat lymphedema, an often overlooked condition impacting millions of cancer survivors worldwide. Jordan, welcome to Industry Ignited.
Thank you, Leanne. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's dive in. I know you began your career as a biomedical engineer at Boston Scientific. What first drew you to medical devices, and when did you realize innovation was your calling?
That's a really good question to start off my history. I initially, when I was studying my degrees, I got a bachelor's and master's in biomedical engineering from the University of Michigan. I thought I probably wanted to be a doctor, actually. And about halfway through my education, I understood that I did not want to be in school for that long, and that I actually wanted to be the one more, quote unquote, behind the scenes that actually is developing the technologies that make doctors successful. And so rather than getting my MD, I got a master's instead in engineering, and then started to really dive deeper into what it means to be an innovator in the medical device space.
All right. So you just realized, I guess, because you didn't want to be in school for one reason, but you decided that you wanted to be the support for doctors in medicine and innovating.
I've also been a bit of a nerd and always had a enjoyment of science and engineering, and medicine, of course, being that. But I like to talk about the way things work and the way we can, for example, in our case, move fluid from one place to another, how planes fly, how cars work. I've always been fascinated with that. And so I wanted to apply that hobby and that interest more towards the medical space than, say, another industry like automotive or aerospace.
Okay. And also like solving big problems that impact a lot of people rather than just treating people individually is what I'm understanding as well. So you made a bold move early on, moving from or internationally, and eventually founding your first startup. How did that experience shape you as a leader and entrepreneur?
Moving across the world is certainly a difficult endeavor and not for the faint of heart. I found that the biggest thing that you get from that is resilience, which is also one of the most important attributes that you need to be a successful entrepreneur, which is resilience, because there's a lot of ups and downs in everything you do. Moving to a new country means learning a new language, learning new bureaucracy, learning how the system works, and it's even harder in another language. And so you eventually develop this kind of resilience and this ability to just roll with the punches, understand that everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, and it may not go your way today, but just keep going because eventually it will. And so I think that taking that experience is part of the reason it drives a successful entrepreneur is that exact same resilience and rolling with the punches. You got a rejection from an investor. All right, not the end of the world. We'll keep on going because that opens another door tomorrow.
Right. So you not only moved, though, you founded a company internationally. Right. So what led you to make that decision?
I always knew that I wanted to start companies, and I could have done that in the US, but moving to Israel is an interesting place because I moved for personal reasons. As a byproduct of being in Israel, which is Startup Nation, I had the opportunity to start a company here. And I actually do believe that starting a company in Israel, it's hard no matter where you start a company. It's slightly easier in Israel because the ecosystem and the network here is designed to support startups. From the Israel Innovation Authority, which we also got a matching grant from on our pre-seed raise, to the investors who are here, to the breadth of innovation. And everyone's heard of successful companies that have come out of Israel, whether it's in tech or medical devices. And that's also because of the spirit of community and I would say brotherly support, also brotherly sisterly support that you get here. Everyone wants to help. And they're not just doing it for $1. They're actually doing it to together build up the country. And so when you start a company here, you're actually considered a big cog, a very important cog in the machine of Israel.
Okay. And so did you already plan on starting a company when you decided to move before? I mean, did you know that there was that, welcoming ecosystem for businesses when you moved there, or is that something
Yeah.
discovered after?
No, I knew about it, but of course the timing as to when and how I started companies is always more luck than planning. And there was a specific moment in which I finally had the opportunity to start my own company. And that was actually during the COVID-19 pandemic. I was already here in Israel and I got laid off from my job. And at the time, Israel was paying unemployment benefits there was no end date. It basically said infinite payments. And I decided that, okay, well, if the government's going to help me stay afloat here, this is my opportunity to go and start a company. And that's where I started my first company, Nameway.
Okay. And I know you worked that for a while and then at some point you shelved that. What lessons did you carry forward that directly influenced how you approached SubQ Bionics subsequently?
Yeah, there are a few. I'll keep it short. The basic quote is if you don't win, you learn. There are I'd say two important lessons that I would take forward from that. The first is to solve big problems. Well, Vainway solved an unmet need. It was not a big problem, so it lacked a efficient product market fit, or really the perfect product market fit, I should say. So I thought about when I start the next company, it really has to be a big problem, one that also market forces would agree with. The second thing is, I think one of the biggest reasons that startups fail, besides product market fit, is trying to grow too fast too quickly. And, it's not about whether you save $500 here or there, you don't buy this, you don't buy that. It comes down to hiring. And it's really easy to hire and it's really difficult to fire. And so you should actually take the opposite approach and to hire slowly and fire quickly. So one thing with SubQ is that we're not hiring anyone beyond the immediate core team we put together for some time now to just try to advance our goals, hit our milestones, and only then will I potentially consider hiring someone else.
Yeah, that's a good approach. And you are right. It is harder to fire than to hire. And they do say, I mean, I've heard that before, slow to hire, quick to fire, but it's not easy. It's a difficult thing to do. You're impacting somebody's life and it's not always easy. Now, you mentioned focusing on solving unmet needs. Was there some moment that you realized that you'd rather focus on meeting the unmet needs rather than incremental improvements?
Well, that came down to, Bainway while it was a big unmet need, I don't know if we could even call it an incremental improvement. It certainly was an innovation, but it was a small unmet need, a niche market. And I wanted to make a big splash this time around. And so I think part of it is what the market has to say. Take your feedback from the market. We did a lot of customer discovery to understand that this is a serious and large unmet need. And incremental innovation is just saying, oh, we're going to add a feature to this and wow, it's a new device now. Oh, we're actually going to go and change the way that people think about treating lymphedema.
Yeah. Now, many people have never heard of lymphedema. It was a new concept for me. I hadn't heard of it before. Can you tell us more about what it is and why it's such a life-altering condition for cancer survivors?
Of course. First of all, lymphedema is a chronic, progressive, incurable disease. It starts from what we know by destruction of the lymphatic system due to cancer treatments. You would be surprised that this isn't rare. Up to 65% of breast cancer survivors actually develop lymphedema. Now, how does that happen? First of all, the lymphatic system is very critical to draining cellular waste from the tissues and bringing it back to the central circulatory system. Everyone knows that the arteries take blood from the heart and nutrients to the tissues, and the veins take it back. But what they don't know is actually only 85% of the waste goes back to the veins. The remaining 15% is through the lymphatic system. These are very tiny vessels throughout your arms and legs and central part of your body. And they're pumped through by lymph nodes. And lymph nodes are these central little balls that hold lymphatic tissue, and they also move immune cells around the body to fight infections. And let's take breast cancer as a prime example. When you have a mastectomy, go through chemo and or radiation, those lymph nodes are often destroyed, removed, and so that actually interrupts the system. It becomes a blockage. You've removed this from the system, and now fluid can't go back to the central circulatory system, and it builds up in the tissues. It's not just the way it looks with massive arms or legs that have swollen to extreme proportions. But these patients also get recurrent infections resulting in visits to the ER, which is a massive burden on the healthcare system and on the insurance pay.
Right, exactly. Now, I understand current treatments rely heavily on external management and patient compliance. What made you believe the solution really needed to be internal and bionic?
Imagine that you had this problem and you went to your oncologist and all they said was, it's not my problem, be thankful you're alive. Here's a little dinky compression sleeve you have to wear now 24 hours a day, 7 days. You would probably look at him and her and say, really, this is the only thing that's available for this? And the answer would be yes. The current standard of care is wearing compression 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and no one bothered to think outside the box. Not because this isn't a big enough problem, but because first of all, I think we can talk about women's health not being the center of focus for a long time. And since it majority affects women, they're often told, stop complaining, go home, deal with it. And so we thought there has to be a different way to do it. Part of the reason that medicine fails us is when the patient is required to do something, they often don't. Because it's hard to remember to wear something every single day. Sometimes it's painful to wear a compression sleeve every single day. And you say, you know what, I'd rather have a swollen arm than wear this painful sleeve. I'd rather have a swollen arm and be able to wear a dress than have to always be covered up. So patients make a choice. We want to give them something that doesn't require them to make a choice. We said that there has to be a way in which we can treat the disease without the patient needing to think about it. And that's where we came up with our solution, which we call a bionic lymph.
Okay. And so you're saying that 65% of cancer survivors, or it's breast cancer survivors,
yeah,
will develop this. And the majority are women, but some men are impacted as well.
Of course, because other cancers cause lymphedema, gynecological cancers, cervical, uteral cancer, of course, women affected. Other general sarcomas and melanomas can also lead to lymphedema, but 80% of the patient population is female.
Is female. Okay. Wow. Yeah, it's amazing that it isn't talked about more. And so it's basically like a something that results after the initial treatments of cancer. So it's not, it's a disease on its own that develops like a secondary disease after the initial treatments.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Is that after, it can actually take up to 5 years after treatment in some cases for symptoms to present.
5 years. Wow. And it's not curable. There's no cure for it.
Curable.
Wow. Okay. And it results in swelling, is what I'm understanding, swelling to arms, legs. So currently they're just having to wear compression sleeves in order to reduce the swelling?
That's right. That's the only treatment. By putting compression on, they're actually trying to force fluid out of the arm and up to the shoulder and back into where there's a functioning lymphatic system.
Okay. And your solution, though, it's an implantable system that works more like a bionic lymph node. How does this approach fundamentally change patients' lives then?
We have developed this bionic lymph node as a set it and forget it kind of system. In one simple procedure, in less than an hour, it can be implanted. It's all subcutaneous, meaning under the skin. And so it gets implanted in the area where there's lymphedema, whether it's the arm or the leg. There's tubing that's tunneled underneath the skin as well, and then a pump that's under the rib cage that runs every day to pull the fluid out and drain it into the peritoneum, which is the stomach cavity. This is a known area for fluid exchange. They do peritoneal dialysis, hydrocephalus shunts from there, which are where they actually take fluid, excess fluid from the brain, and they also drain it to the peritoneum. So we're following this precedent in medicine by doing so. The ultimate advantage of our device is no wearables. We can set it and forget it. It runs, it pulls the fluid out, it drains it. It does this all on its own without the patient needing to have any intervention on it whatsoever.
Okay. Now, are you having to implant multiple lymph nodes per patient? So
one pump can be attached up to 3, I would say, sources or intake ports, as we call them, in order to make sure we're getting all the fluid out of the lymph. We leave it up to the physician's discretion based on the patient, how the patient presents.
Okay. And so about After learning about lymphedema and going into this specialty and speaking directly with patients living with the disease, what has surprised you most, I guess,
You know
about their
what? Yeah,
experiences?
what's really probably surprised me most is how desperate patients are. The fact is that they have been told to just go home and deal with this for so long that they are incredibly desperate for new solutions. And as soon as we have come forward and made it to the point, it's been amazing to me that they've come through. And the other thing that surprised me is how many different devices they have to deal with today for managing it. So I mentioned the compression sleeve, but they might have 20 or 30 of these at home because it's an article of clothing that you have to wear and get
Right.
dirty. You have to wash it. And then maybe they go see their physiotherapist once a week and they get in these larger, there's fancy compression devices out there where it actually actively does compression. It works for an hour. You have to sit there. You can't move for 40 minutes to an hour. It does work. You get out. An hour later, you have to get back. It's also surprised me how much patients are affected by their surrounding. When you fly on a plane, your lymphedema will get worse because of the pressure change, even certain weathers. And I think that what stuck with me the most is just how much that each one of these patients has to think about just to try to even manage their disease so that it is at a level that doesn't interfere with their life. But of course, it does because of all the things that they have to think about.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like it's a huge disruptor. I mean, and time sucker as well. If you're having to sit there for 45 minutes for the swelling to go down, just for the treatment with
I
the
spoke
current
to a
methods.
patient today who said to me, I really should, but I don't have time to sit there for 40 minutes
Uh-huh.
and do nothing. So
Wow.
they'd rather have a swollen arm or leg in this patient's case than sit there for 40 minutes and not move.
Right. No, I get it. And is it just like once a day, or how often do they have to do that?
If you really wanted it to work, it'd have to be 2 to 3 times a day every day.
So that's 2 to 3 hours of your life every day
Yep.
dealing with the condition. Wow. Now, you're building a class 3 implantable medical device, one of the most challenging paths in medtech. What keeps you moving forward despite the long regulatory road?
So the mission drives me the most, that we see what these patients go through all the time. So I want to make sure that we give them a solution that reaches the end. If we don't, then we failed them. So that seeing what they go through every day drives me to reach our potential.
Yeah. Right. No, that's a big mission and it impacts a lot of people. I get how motivating that is.
And also add that team is also what keeps me motivated, from my CTO and co-founder to our project manager. The team and the amount of effort that they put in for the success of this project is just as motivating as the mission.
Right. Just the people that you're working with, and I guess their ability to innovate, their ability to contribute. And how did you go about finding the team that you're working with?
That's a great question. My CTO and co-founder, I met Dave Knapp, who's VP of R&D at Boston Scientific, for 10 plus years. I knew him when I worked at BSC. But when we first started building this company, and I discovered the intellectual property, which we licensed from the Weizmann Institute, I gave him a call. I knew he hadn't been working. He'd already not been working at BSC for some time, and I asked him if he was willing to start a company with me. So he joined, and then we went on and made our first and only hire so far with our wonderful project manager. And between the three of us, we've really started to drive this project forward together.
Yeah. Right. I guess you have to really trust the people that you're working with and both have the same passion for the innovation, because I know it is a long road and there are lots of twists and turns, and having that I guess just the perseverance to keep you going is important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, fundraising in early stage medtech, I know, is becoming increasingly difficult. What advice would you give founders navigating today's capital environment?
Get out there, and you have to put boots on the ground, and you have to engage with so many people. Most people can't help you, but you have to kiss a lot of frogs. this comes back to the very first or second question you asked me about perseverance and resilience. If you keep talking to people, you will eventually find the right person, investor. And so you have to start, and you have to start early. So don't wait until, oh, now we're going to open the round. So you have to really start from day one to engage them. You might say, oh, you're too early for me. That's fine. Send them updates, have regular check-ins with them, with each investor, and you have to make sure that you're marketing yourself. So being on podcasts like this is one of the best ways to engage investors on a regular basis. You are ultimately selling the business to them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's creating awareness, one, and creating or educating them as well. And then just staying top of mind, regularly getting out there. Yeah, like you said, providing updates, letting them know you're still in the game and what's happening.
I highly recommend bringing on someone as exceptional as our VP of Marketing and Investor Relations, Rachel Offenberg, who's done a fantastic job at our social media presence, helping to get us on stage and helping us to engage investors in a way that it really does take a team to accomplish every single mission of the company.
Right, right. And what is, as far as marketing, what's worked the best for you so far?
Being on stage physically has probably been the most successful that I've found, and getting engagement face to face. Investors invest in people they can meet. Zoom is great, and Zoom has made the world smaller so that we can all engage. But ultimately, people want to shake your hand. It's going to conferences, it's speaking, it's getting speaking engagements, it's being present. And you also have to be, I wouldn't say pushy is not really the word I'm looking for, but you have to be engaging in the sense that don't be shy. You have to go up and talk to people. You have to introduce yourself, and you have to sell. So doing it in person has ultimately been the most successful approach that I've had to date.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's where, especially coming out of COVID, I know it's been a few years, but people got used to, being in their shell or in the comfort of their own home and doing everything remotely. But there isn't a substitute, I don't think, for being in person and forming those relationships. And I mean, you get to know people at a different level. And I think trust, can be formed a lot more quickly, by being in person, like you mentioned. I think there's just more opportunity too to go deeper, to ask those deeper questions and such when you're in person and meeting people at conferences or networking. And yeah, I think too, are you able to show and tell? Are you able to show them your device and how
Not
it works?
yet. We're still trying to protect a bit of the details around the intellectual property. We're still waiting to file some patents. Plus, right now it's a bit big and bulky and would require a bunch of different carrying around. Literally, it looks like a kid's science experiment right now, a bunch of wires out of it. So not yet, but it's not really necessary because interestingly enough, it's not like, let's say, microgun drug-eluting stents or balloons where you just have a physical device, because a lot of it's driven by software as well as internal mechanics that you can't even see. I could show you a picture of, I can make a block of foam and say this is it, and it would have the same effect.
Right.
So,
oh, that's interesting. Okay, so just like through your pitch decks and that kind of thing, conceptually, you show them how it works and internally what it does. Got it. Yeah. So looking ahead, what does success look like for SubQ Bionics in the next 5 to 7 years?
Success for SubQ Bionics would be touching all the millions of patients who really need our help and seeing our device implanted and giving patients back their freedom and mobility such that they can have the life that they've always wanted. That really comes back to our mission statement that we believe that all women suffering from lymphedema deserve to thrive and not just survive. You want to go travel, you can travel. Don't think about bringing anything with you. And we would also love to have someone help us achieve our mission by partnering with a strategic or even reaching an M&A where someone buys us, because they have much more access to patients than we do, some of the large medical device companies.
Right. Yeah. So ultimately, like staying true to your mission and impacting the most people possible. And so if you're able to partner with someone, or if someone buys you out that has the access and the resources to reach a lot more people, that makes sense. Now, you've spoken about emotional balance and equanimity as a founder. How do you stay grounded through the highs and lows of building a medical device company?
So again, it all comes back to this resilience and perseverance, and it's use the right word, equanimity. Because how do we stay mentally grounded? It's important too that we don't just focus entirely on work. Actually, I have on my desk behind me, you can't see it because of the background, I have a thing on debt, okay? And it's not financial debt. It's all kinds, there's other types of debt. If you don't take care of your health, if you don't take care of your relationships, if you don't take care of different things specifically involving the company, because there's some reason, oh, I can't do that right now, I can't do that. Working too hard, you sacrifice your relationships. You can sacrifice your health. I think those are two of the biggest things. The way to really succeed and stay grounded is to make sure every facet of your life is well balanced. So I still enjoy time with my fiance. We're going to be married in May. I want to make sure to build that relationship and make that a central part of my life. My hobbies, playing guitar, playing tennis, being into the gym, staying active, are all critical to maintaining mental health, that equanimity, staying exactly where I need to be. And at times where things are really turbulent, I also have meditation. That's been a key helper for me in finding that center.
Yeah, so just really being cognizant of balance in all of the important parts of life, and having focus is great, but if you let one part of your life just take over to the detriment of other parts, then ultimately everything is at risk and can crumble. And yeah, I like that concept of debt in that way. I haven't thought about it like that before. Usually when you think of debt, it's a financial concept, but right, if there's debts in other parts of your life that you need to address, paying those debts so I guess, can move forward powerfully is important. Very cool. Now, for engineers and innovators considering medtech entrepreneurship, what should they really understand before taking the leap?
So I have two pieces of advice that I would give, especially if it's first time entrepreneur. The first is don't design a technology because you think it's cool. I see a lot of engineers who say, well, I've developed this really cool thing. I say, well, who's going to buy it? And you start trying to backpedal and find a fit for the technology. Sometimes that works, but rarely does it work. You have to start the opposite direction. Find the pain points and then develop a solution for it. Start with customer discovery. Start by engaging potential customers to really figure out where the problem is. And don't lead the witness. Don't say, well, I have this great thing. No, just ask questions. What's it like when you do this? How do you feel when this happens? And that's a lot of what we did with lymphedema. That's just how we discovered how many different things patients have to deal with every day.
Right. Yeah. So really understanding your audience and their pain, because that's the whole point. It's like if you're innovating and you're creating a solution, you've got to understand the problem that you're facing and making sure that it's a real problem, not something that's just that you think is there, but really getting it from the patients themselves.
And the second thing, if I may, is it's not as much of a risk to start a company as people think it is. Now, I hear all the time excuses like, well, I've got a family and I got to pay bills and I can't leave, my partner this way. Well, there are two things. One is if your partner has a good job, then hopefully he or she supports you to do this. If not, you have something else you need to figure out. Second, if you're successful in creating a demand for what you're doing, you'll raise money and you'll get paid a salary along the way. So you will make money to cover your bills. Even if the company doesn't succeed, you're not going broke.
Right.
So I think that's a common misconception that people have. Well, what if the company doesn't succeed? You're not going to lose money. You're going to make a salary throughout that time. You're not going to have a big $1 billion exit and be a millionaire, but you're not going to go broke. And I want to encourage people to change the way they look at the risks.
Mm-hmm.
The risks to yourself are actually not so great. And so it's a good thing to think about. Well, as long as I have the ability to pay my bills, I should be able to drive my innovation forward.
Right. Yeah, that is a good piece of advice, something to think about, that it's not as risky as you think it might be. And so if you can keep yourself afloat and yourself fed, then you can keep moving forward, right?
Exactly.
Now, if there's one leadership lesson this journey has reinforced for you, what would that be?
The team. I can't take credit for that quote. That was 𝐉𝐨𝐫𝐝𝐿. I'm a Michigan guy, so fantastic coach back in the 60s and 70s, but it should revolve around the team. I'm not that important. It comes down to the team feeling like they're a big part of this driver and a big part of the mission. Listen to the team, listen to their opinions. Always be considering your team's needs, and you'll find that a lot more will get.
Great advice. And how do you stay connected to your team? Are you working virtually, or do you have an office? Do you come together, or how do you work?
Both. So we have an office here in Tel Aviv where our project manager also sits. So we're physically here. My CTO is in Minnesota, so we do a cross-continental type of hybrid, but we have regular Zoom meetings. He comes to Israel once a quarter, and it's very possible in today's age, especially since we've outsourced the heavy lifting of the work to a design firm, especially here in Israel. We're able to manage that hybrid work in a very effective way. And that comes down to the leadership of trusting your team, even if you're not physically seeing them.
Right. Right. So as long as you're all aligned towards that mission and all driven towards the same goal, then keeping in, no matter where you're located, keeping close is possible. And yeah, there are more tools than ever these days to do that, which is exciting. You can work with people across the world and still be productive and innovative. Yeah. Well, Jordan, thank you for sharing your journey and the work you're doing in bringing dignity, mobility, and freedom back to cancer survivors. For listeners who want to learn more about SubQ Bionics or follow your work, where's the best place to connect with you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn and search for me, Jordan Pollack, or SubQ Bionics. You can also visit us at our website, subqbionics.com, to see all of our news and regular happenings.
Great. Thank you. And to our audience, if you found today's conversation inspiring, be sure to subscribe, share, and tune into the next episode. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and keep igniting industry.